There's a man sitting in a small, quiet room in the year 1513, banned from public life, cut off from the courts he once served. He has no money left to speak of, no title, no power. And yet, in that room, he's writing something so honest about how the world actually works that people will still be reading it 500 years later and still be uncomfortable with what it says. His name is Niccolò Machiavelli, and the book he wrote wasn't really about kings. It was about something you've been taught to ignore your entire life. Here's the story you've probably absorbed without ever questioning it. Work hard, save what you can, be fair, be patient, do the right thing long enough, and eventually the world notices. Eventually it pays you back. It's a comforting idea. It's also, according to 5 centuries of evidence, only half true. Because if effort and good behavior were really what determined who accumulates wealth and who doesn't, the hardest working people you know would be the richest. They're usually not. Some of the most disciplined, decent, exhausted people you'll ever meet are barely getting by, while people who seem to break every rule of fairness keep climbing. That gap should bother you more than it does. Machiavelli noticed the same gap, just in a different arena. He wasn't studying spreadsheets. He was studying thrones, courts, and the people who managed to keep their heads attached to their bodies while everyone around them lost everything. And what he found wasn't comfortable. He found that the people who lasted weren't always the most virtuous. They were the ones who understood something the good and honest ones refused to look at directly. Perception decides who gets power. Timing decides who gets to keep it. And morality, on its own, has never built an empire. That idea didn't die with him. It just changed clothes. It stopped living in royal courts and started living in boardrooms, negotiations, investment decisions, and the quiet calculations wealthy people make that they never explain to anyone else. The rules didn't disappear. They just went underground, where most people never think to look for them. So here's the real question this video is going to answer. What if the version of the wealth game you've been playing, the honest, patient, hope it pays off version, was never actually the winning version? What if there's a second game running underneath it, one most people never get taught, because the people who understand it have no reason to explain it to anyone else? By the end of this video, you're going to understand that blueprint, not theory, not motivation. The actual psychological architecture the wealthy quietly operate by. The one Machiavelli described 500 years before anyone thought to apply it to money instead of monarchies. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Because somewhere out there right now, someone who has never read a single page of Machiavelli is using his exact principles to outmaneuver you. And they didn't need luck to do it. Walk into almost any office and you'll eventually run into the same quiet injustice. Someone gets passed over for a raise despite hitting every target on their review, while a colleague with a thinner track record walks into the boss's office and walks out with a bigger title. Nobody in the room did anything illegal, nobody lied. And yet somehow, the person who worked quieter and harder ends up watching someone else get the credit. If you've been in the workforce for more than a few years, you've seen some version of this play out. And what's strange isn't that it happens, it's how fast we explain it away. We call it office politics. We call it unfair. We shrug, say the system is broken, and move on, without ever asking the harder question. What if this isn't a glitch in the system? What if this is the system? 500 years ago, Machiavelli watched the same pattern unfold in Renaissance Italy, except the stakes weren't promotions. They were survival. He studied rulers who were genuinely good men, fair and well-intentioned, and watched them get overthrown, exiled, or quietly erased from history. Then he studied rulers with far less virtue, who somehow stayed in power for decades. His conclusion wasn't cynicism for its own sake, it was just honest. People, he wrote, judge by what they see and what results they get, almost never by what someone actually intended. A ruler who appeared strong was treated as strong, whether or not he was. A ruler who appeared just was trusted, whether or not he was. That single observation is the hinge this entire chapter turns on, because it never stayed locked in the 16th century. It became the operating logic behind how credibility gets assigned in every boardroom, every negotiation, every investment decision made today. Wealth doesn't flow toward the most honest person in the room. It flows toward the person the room already believes is valuable. And belief, unlike honesty, can be shaped. Here's what that means for you, starting tomorrow morning. Stop measuring your progress only by effort. Start paying attention to how you're actually being perceived by your boss, your clients, your partners. Not because honesty stops mattering. It doesn't. But invisible integrity has never once outcompeted visible value, and pretending otherwise is exactly what keeps good people stuck. Which raises a much sharper question. If perception outweighs effort this completely, what exactly are wealthy people doing with how they present themselves? And why does some of it feel almost like deception, even when nothing they're doing is technically dishonest? A founder once told an interviewer, years after his company sold for 9 figures, that the single best financial decision he ever made was refusing to tell anyone what he was building. Not investors he didn't trust yet, not old co-workers, not even close friends who kept asking why he'd quietly left a stable job. For almost 2 years, he let people assume he was simply between things, drifting, maybe a little lost. Meanwhile, he was closing deals, building relationships, and locking in advantages that would have evaporated the moment competitors caught wind of them. That timing wasn't luck, it was strategy. Here's the instinct working against you right now, and it's a generous one. When you're excited about a goal, a business idea, a big financial move, a plan to change your life, the natural urge is to share it. Announcing it feels like commitment. It feels like accountability. Somewhere along the way we were taught that saying a goal out loud makes it more real, and that the people around us will rally behind it once they know. Reality tends to disagree. Psychologists have observed something almost backwards about how social groups respond to visible ambition. The moment you announce a big goal, your brain gets a small hit of satisfaction, as if the goal is already partly achieved, which quietly saps your drive to actually pursue it. Worse, the people around you don't always root for you the way you'd hope. Some feel threatened, some feel left behind. Without meaning to, they start finding reasons your plan won't work, offering concerned advice that's really just discomfort wearing a helpful mask. You've probably felt this from the other side of the conversation too, if you're honest. Machiavelli built an entire philosophy around this exact vulnerability. He warned that a leader who reveals every plan hands their rivals a map, free intelligence, offered up before a single move has been made. Nobody can block a path they don't know you're walking. Nobody can undercut a deal they don't know exists. Silence, in his world, wasn't secrecy for its own sake. It was armor. So here's the shift worth making this week. The next time you're sitting on a real plan, a financial goal, a career move, a new venture, resist the pull to explain yourself to everyone in your circle. Let your results speak first. Announce the destination once you've already arrived, not while you're still figuring out the route. But staying quiet is only step one. The people who actually build leverage take this further. They don't just withhold information. They let others draw the wrong conclusions entirely on purpose. What does it actually look like to be deliberately misread, and why would anyone want that? Being deliberately misread on purpose is a strategy for another day. Right now, there's a simpler trap most people fall into without realizing it, and it involves the car in your driveway. A friend of mine once pointed out a neighbor's new sports car with genuine admiration, convinced the guy had just closed some huge deal. Turns out the car was leased, the mortgage was 3 months behind, and the success everyone assumed was happening had nothing to do with reality. Meanwhile, the quiet couple 2 doors down, the ones nobody ever talks about because they drive a decade-old sedan and never mention money, had already paid off their house, and were sitting on a portfolio most people would envy. Nobody at the block party would have guessed it either way. Self-made wealth and inherited wealth tend to behave in opposite directions when it comes to spending. People who built their money from nothing usually spend quietly because they remember what it took to get there, and they know exactly how fast it can disappear. People who inherited money, or who are performing wealth they don't actually have, tend to spend loudly because the spending itself is the point. It's proof, aimed outward at everyone watching. Machiavelli understood something rulers learn the hard way. Visible strength doesn't just earn respect, it also paints a target. A kingdom that flaunted its gold attracted invaders faster than one that stayed modest and well defended. The same law applies to a bank account. Flash a lifestyle that looks bigger than it is, and you don't just win admiration. You attract lenders eager to offer you debt, relatives who suddenly need help, and business partners who assume you have more to lose than to gain from walking away. You've probably watched this happen among your own circle of friends. Lifestyle creep rarely arrives all at once. It's a slightly nicer car this year, a slightly bigger house next year, until the appearance of success has quietly outpaced the actual number in the account behind it. So look at your last significant purchase honestly. Did it protect your position, or did it expose it? That single question, asked before every future decision, will tell you more about your financial trajectory than your income ever will. Which leaves one thing unanswered. If flaunting wealth is actually a liability, what do the people who truly hold power signal instead, quietly, to the only audience that actually matters? That silent signal is coming. But first, there's a harder truth to sit with, because it touches something most people never want to question: whether being liked is actually working for you. Cesare Borgia sent one of his own commanders to govern a lawless province, a place so chaotic that ordinary rule had failed for years. The commander cracked down hard, restored order through sheer force, and made himself thoroughly hated in the process. Once the province was stable, Borgia had the man publicly executed and left his body on display in the town square. It was a brutal move, but a calculated one. The people didn't mourn the enforcer. They thanked their prince for delivering them from him. Borgia understood something most of us resist admitting. Authority doesn't come from being adored. It comes from being taken seriously. Now bring that instinct into your own life, minus the body in the square. Think about the people who consistently get walked over financially. The friend who always ends up covering the group dinner. The freelancer who discounts every invoice because a client seemed unhappy. The family member who keeps lending money nobody ever repays. None of them are foolish. They've just optimized for being liked, and the world quietly punishes that choice every single time. Compare that to a negotiator who states her price once, explains it briefly, and doesn't flinch when the client pushes back. She's not rude, she's not cold. She simply doesn't perform likability to close the deal. Clients grumble sometimes, sure, but they also don't try to lowball her twice, and they refer her more often than the competitors who bend over backward to please everyone. Machiavelli's real insight wasn't that people should be cruel. It was that respect protects resources in a way affection never can. The moment people sense you'll bend to stay liked, they start testing exactly how far that bending goes. So here's tonight's assignment. Think of one relationship right now where you've been trading your own terms just to stay likable. A rate you undercharge, a boundary you never enforce. Decide what firmness would actually look like there tomorrow. But push too hard in that direction, and something far more dangerous starts creeping in. The kind of fear that doesn't earn respect at all, but breeds resentment instead. Where exactly does firm become fatal? That line between firm and fatal is worth its own conversation, but for now, park it. Because there's a quieter danger that shows up long before anyone's testing your limits. And it has nothing to do with how you're perceived. Two co-workers get the exact same bonus at the end of the year. One immediately puts it toward a separate savings account she never touches, the kind reserved strictly for emergencies. The other spends most of it within a month, upgrading a phone, booking a trip, telling himself he'll catch up on saving once things settle down. Nothing settles down. It never does. 18 months later, when both of them face an unexpected medical bill, one writes a check without blinking. The other puts it on a credit card at 22% interest and spends the next 2 years digging out. That gap has almost nothing to do with income and everything to do with a habit built during calm, ordinary months when nothing dramatic was happening at all. Machiavelli wrote about this exact trap, just in a different context. He warned that rulers who only prepared for war once war arrived were already finished, because armies, alliances, and fortresses take years to build, not weeks. The ruler who used peacetime to train, stockpile, and fortify was the one who survived when the crisis finally came. Everyone else was improvising with no foundation underneath them. Your finances work by the exact same clock. The discipline that saves you doesn't get built during the emergency. It gets built in the boring, uneventful months, when nothing feels urgent and saving feels almost pointless. That's precisely why most people skip it. Urgency is a much better motivator than foresight, and foresight rarely feels rewarding in the moment. So here's your one move, starting today, not someday. Pick one rule, small enough to actually keep. Maybe it's automatically setting aside 10% of every payment before you touch the rest. Maybe it's a hard boundary that you never, under any circumstances, put a non-emergency on credit. Whatever you choose, the size matters less than the repetition. Discipline compounds exactly like money does. But even the most disciplined saver can be undone by something they never saw coming. Because Machiavelli warned that a ruler's greatest threat rarely came from a foreign army. It came from someone inside the palace walls. So who in your own life actually holds that kind of access to what you've built? In 1520, one of the most trusted men in the Medici court wasn't an enemy soldier or a rival prince. He was a long-time advisor, someone who had dined at the family table for years, who knew where the money was kept and how the accounts were structured. When the moment came, he didn't need to storm a gate or break down a wall. He simply used the access he'd already been given. Machiavelli wrote about this pattern obsessively, because he'd watched it happen to ruler after ruler. The fatal wound rarely came from outside the palace. It came from someone who already had a key. Most of us assume the opposite about our own money. We worry about the market crashing, the economy tightening, some unpredictable disaster arriving out of nowhere. Those risks are real, sure, but they're also visible. You can see a recession coming. You can watch interest rates rise. What you can't always see is the slow erosion that happens when someone who loves you, a sibling, a business partner, a longtime friend, starts treating your resources as somehow more available than their own. It rarely looks like betrayal at first. It looks like a small loan that's never quite repaid. A business partnership where the paperwork stayed informal because bringing up contracts felt like an insult to the friendship. A family member who always seems to need help right when you've finally gotten ahead, and who somehow makes you feel guilty for hesitating. None of it feels like theft in the moment. It just feels like love, or loyalty, or family, right up until you tally what it actually cost you. This is exactly why unclear boundaries with people you trust are more dangerous than any market downturn. A recession affects everyone equally. A boundary you never set only affects you. So take one relationship in your life right now where money and closeness have quietly blurred together. No clear terms, no real structure, just an unspoken assumption that things will work out. Decide what a real boundary would look like there. It might be a written agreement. It might just be a number you're finally willing to say out loud. Silence protected your plans. Respect protected your boundaries. Discipline protected your future. Protection guards what you've already built. But none of these principles work in isolation. They were always meant to operate together as a single unified way of moving through the world. What does that complete blueprint actually look like once every piece is finally in place? That complete blueprint is close now. But there's one more shift to make first, because everything you've learned so far means nothing without it. In the early 2000s, a fast fashion company burst onto the scene, promising to disrupt an entire industry overnight. It grew fast, spent aggressively, expanded into every market it could reach, and got written up in magazines as the future of retail. Within a decade it was gone, buried under debt it took on, chasing growth it couldn't sustain. Meanwhile, a quieter competitor kept opening one store at a time, reinvesting profit instead of chasing headlines, saying no to expansion that looked exciting but didn't make financial sense. Nobody wrote breathless articles about them for years. They're still operating today, while the flashier company exists only as a case study in what not to do. That contrast tells you something important about how lasting power actually gets built. And it's not what most people assume. Machiavelli studied rulers who won fast and rulers who lasted, and he noticed they were rarely the same people. The bold conquerors who moved quickly and struck hard often burned out just as fast, undone by the same aggression that made them famous. The rulers who endured for decades were the patient ones, the ones willing to wait years for the right opening instead of forcing one that wasn't ready. Speed impressed people. Patience is what actually held territory. Wealth obeys the same quiet law. A bold move might make a great story to tell at dinner, but compounding doesn't care about stories. It rewards the decision you were willing to repeat for 10 years, not the one that looked impressive for 10 minutes. So take whatever financial decision is sitting in front of you right now and ask it one honest question. Does this serve me a decade from now? Or does it just feel good this week? That single filter will quietly reshape almost every choice you make from here forward. But here's the part nobody wants to hear. None of this. The silence, the perception, the discipline, the patience, works if you're not willing to become someone slightly different than who you are right now. And that's the uncomfortable truth waiting at the very end of this blueprint. Becoming someone slightly different doesn't mean becoming someone colder, or someone who trusts no one, or someone who treats every relationship like a negotiation. That was never the point. It means finally admitting that good intentions were never the whole equation, and that pretending otherwise has been costing you more than you realized. Look back at everything you've just walked through. Perception decides who gets trusted with opportunity. Silence protects a plan before it's strong enough to survive scrutiny. Restraint, not display, protects what you've already built. Respect, not likability, keeps people from testing your limits. Discipline, practiced when nothing is wrong, is what actually saves you when something finally is. Boundaries with the people closest to you protect the relationship as much as the money. And patience, real patience, is what separates the people who win once from the people who keep winning for decades. None of that is about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming deliberate. There's a difference, even if the two get confused constantly. Here's your move, and it doesn't require waiting for the right moment to start. Before this day ends, pick one thing from everything you just heard. Maybe it's a purchase you've been justifying that actually exposes more than it protects. Maybe it's a financial boundary with someone close to you that stayed vague for far too long. Maybe it's simply the discipline of moving 10% of your next payment somewhere you won't touch it. Whichever one you pick, do it today, while the discomfort is still fresh enough to move you. People have spent 5 centuries calling Machiavelli cynical, dangerous, even evil. Maybe he was simply the first person willing to write down, in plain language, the game everyone else was already playing quietly and pretending not to notice. You don't have to like the game to understand it. But once you do, you finally get to decide how you're going to play it.